When work stops being the thing that explains who you are, then the question is, who are you? This reflection isn't about leaving work or reaching some neat life stage. It's about what happens when work stops doing the explaining for you. Whether you choose that moment or life chooses it for you. I want to pick up where the last few reflections have quietly led us. We've talked about midlife regret. We've talked about where life starts to feel different and about what happens when you stop chasing things that once felt essential to being who you are. All of that leads to the one big question, and it boils down to this. When work stops being the thing that explains who you are, what happens then? And I want to say this early because it's the bit people don't always expect. When you change role, or maybe you can no longer do that role, or the job that you've been doing, let's be honest, you don't just lose the routine. You can lose your automatic relevance, your sense of purpose, and sometimes it can feel like you've lost that part of your identity. That built-in validation of work goes, and along with it is that easy answer to that universal question, the icebreaker, so what do you do? And I can tell you from some very uncomfortable experiences, it can feel quite odd, even tongue-tying, when you don't quite know how to answer that really simple question anymore. Let me be clear about something. This isn't a sum that says, I do nothing, therefore I am nothing. Not being employed does not remove your personality, your experience, or your right to be you. And I'm not talking about retirement either, at least not exclusively, and certainly not as some neat age-related and scheduled event. Sometimes work stops because you choose it, and then sometimes it stops because life chooses that for you. Redundancy, burnout, long-term illness, a change in family circumstances maybe, or even a change in your own energy. These are real moments where the role drops away, whether you're ready for it or not. We like to think we have a plan. But life is what often unfolds right in front of you, whether you like it or not. When these moments happen, that question shows up quickly, and it can be felt keenly. So this isn't really about employment status. It's about identity. For much of our younger lives, we prepare for work, who we're going to be, what we're going to do. Then for most of our adult lives, work does more than pay the bills. Socially, it explains who we are, where we belong, and why our time matters. So when that grip loosens, even slightly, a gap opens. And here's the part that doesn't get talked about enough. Most people don't glide smoothly from work to retirement and on to enlightenment. They oscillate, they test, they return, they renegotiate. That isn't inconsistency. That's the reality of a modern working life. Systems change, markets wobble, health intervenes, family needs shift, and the version of you that could do all of it begins to change. As I've shared before, I've been semi-retired, I've been in partial employment, I've been fully retired, and then, as now, I'm back in full-time employment. And this is what I've learned. The real challenge isn't deciding whether to work or not. It's deciding who you are when work is no longer doing all the explaining and heavy lifting for you. Because when work stops defining you, you don't just lose structure, you lose a social script, that familiar marker on the map that says who you are. You lose the easy introductions, the shorthand of small talk, the sense of being automatically counted. You've spent decades being useful, being responsible, being relied on. That loss can feel bigger than expected. Not because you've lost value and not because you're incapable. Far from it indeed. But it's more because our culture confuses usefulness, our usefulness, with our worth. So people cling on or rush to replace one role with another, or some quietly withdraw. Not because they're weak, but because identity hates a vacuum. So here's a different way to look at that gap. What if it isn't a problem to solve? What if it's a place to understand? Not to reinvent yourself overnight, not to optimize yourself, not to search for a guru, and not to rush into a new label, but to notice what remains when the role loosens. Judgment, perspective, curiosity, presence even. All the things that don't show up on a CV, but matter deeply in the third act of life. If work has started to feel different for you, or if it no longer answers that question, who am I, the way that it once did, you're not broken and you're not behind. You might be just in between definitions, and that's okay. It's a very human place to be. You're not a failure, and you are far from alone.